Manchester United are the champions of Europe again.
Hello and welcome back to the One United podcast. I'm joined as ever by Henry. Henry, how you doing?
Yeah, pretty good. You?
Yeah, not bad at all. And we're delighted to be joined again by Waz. Waz, how you doing?
Yeah, mate, not too bad. Good victory yesterday, so yeah, I feel all right, to be honest.
Definitely. It's nice to be on the winning side for once. It seems like we haven't said that in a while. But yeah, we'll get straight into the episode. So the main body of what we wanted to talk about was a centre-back signing, because obviously watching the West Brom game, it became just as evident as usual that we definitely need reinforcements there. So, we saw there's in the media, there's a 3-man shortlist, I think it's fair to say, of Varane, Koundé and Konate. Now, unless anyone wants to throw any more names into the mix, I think we'll just analyse those three and how suitable they'd be. But without getting too deep into it, Henry, out of those three from the start, who's one that's really attracting you?
Oh God. To be fair, I like Konate. I really do, and I haven't, I haven't looked into him that much, but I don't know. Leipzig play a weird style of football, so I'm not sure whether he's going to be that suited to us. Koundé was a bit shaky in the first half against Dortmund, but other than that, second half he kind of improved and they did as a team. So I think he's obviously the main one we're looking at in terms of physicality. He's strong and he's quick, and that's what we need. But we saw yesterday, we just need to keep Bailly fit. We just need to keep him fit. If we can keep him fit for the rest of the season, we'll be fine. But when he plays well, and then he kind of seems to get injured straight away. And I was mulling over it, thinking, why does he keep getting injured? And then he tries a bicycle kick when we're 3-0 up in the opposition box. I think this guy's such a moron. So someone needs to tell him, because that's why he gets injured, because he karate kicks people and he's just doing stupid stuff. So, but yeah, Koundé's the main one, but I hope we can keep Bailly fit. I really do, because I really like him and I think he's a top centre half.
Yeah, there's no doubt in that. It's just his injury record that speaks for itself, isn't it? Now, just off the bat, Waz, who's your sort of main target in your eyes?
Yeah, I am a fan of Konate, but when I've seen him alongside Upamecano, I've liked how Upamecano's drived out from the back. He steps into midfield. I didn't see that as much with Konate, but obviously I don't watch him week in, week out, in all honesty. With Koundé, he's the one who stands out for me. With Varane, with his age and his wages and his declining form as well, I'll probably leave that one to the side. I think we need to get the fresh centre-back. Why would Madrid give us Varane and then get Koundé themselves? To get what I mean? Why don't we get Koundé and let them keep Varane? Why don't we progress, to get what I mean, as a team? Why is it always second option for us? We should get first option and then push forward from there. So yeah, Koundé is my personal preference, although Konate is a good player.
Yeah, 100%. I've got a comment in from Jamie saying Ole's looking at Tyrone Mings, which I've seen a couple, and it wouldn't surprise me if we ended up with him at all. But yeah, we'll go through them individually then and just sort of weigh up pros and cons. So we'll start with Konate. Obviously, none of us are experts by any means, but just from what you've seen and what you've sort of read about, Henry, you got any sort of big pros and cons for the player?
Well, he's got pace, because if you're in that Leipzig back line, you've got to have pace. It's simple as that. They rely so heavily on playing a high line and playing risky football. That's what they do, and that's why they made the mistakes they did against Liverpool, because they play risky football at the back, and it's expansive but dangerous. So they have to be quick. So that's a massive positive. Leipzig are a footballing side, so I know they made mistakes against Liverpool, and I know they were poor in the first game that they played against us, but they can all play football. They're all good footballers in that team. Even Galashi's a reasonable footballer. So those are the two pros. I guess that the cons are they seem to get caught out quite a lot. Those three at the back. Even Upamecano, I was looking the first half. I was thinking he's making so many mistakes. That's what they do, though, because they're a risky team. So I guess the con of that is he will make mistakes, and our team at the moment needs a partnership that can cut those mistakes out, because that's what's costing us games. So yeah, I guess that's a con of the way that they play. But I can't really speak too much on him, because I watched Leipzig a little bit this season, but I haven't watched every single game they played. So, but they're a good side. So if we're taking someone from Leipzig, we're taking a reasonable player. They don't have any bad players in that starting 11. So, but yeah, other than that, I can't say a lot.
Yeah, of course. Now I'll come to you, Waz. Obviously, I think that with this centre back that we're trying to bring in, it's more important than anything that he works well alongside Maguire. So, given the pros and cons in your mind, sort of, do you think he will work with Maguire, and if so, why?
Yeah, I was thinking exactly that. For me, with Konate, similar to what Henry mentioned, I like his pace, his recovery pace as well. And with the high line, they've got to have recovery pace. And what else with the Konate's height? I feel he wins a lot of aerial duels because of his height as well. However, alongside Maguire, I'd prefer someone like Upamecano. Obviously, he's going Bayern Munich now, but because Upamecano, he'll step into midfield more. He's got similar traits to Bailly as well, and that's something I prefer. I feel like Upamecano is a partner to Konate, whereas Upamecano would be a partner to Maguire as well, if that makes sense. Whereas Konate and Maguire, I feel they got similar attributes, and they won't step into midfield as much. Maguire does it a bit, but when he's under pressure, but when he's not under pressure, sorry. But yeah, I think obviously Upamecano would have been the better partnership for Maguire. However, he's obviously got Bayern Munich now.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, I've got the website up. I've got FB Ref or whatever you'd call it. It's a pretty decent website when you're looking for stats. Now I'll share my screen just so that you can sort of see what I'm on about. But if we look at him statistically and sort of what he offers, I've got his page up here. So, in terms of a goal scoring centre back, he's in sort of the upper percentage of centre backs, which is a positive. We get goals from Maguire, but that's about it. Dribbles completed, he's in the real upper percentile for centre backs there, which again would be good. We talk about progressing into midfield. I think that would be one of his attributes on a given day. He's not, by the look of it, he's not a great passer. 25% of centre backs. So I think that will be a bit of a detriment to the way United play. But you look at aerials won 80%. That's always going to be a positive. Tackles won 1.8 per game. That's always going to be a positive. You want a defender that can defend, don't you? Really. So I think that's about it for Konate. Sort of out of 10, I'll come to you, Henry. How happy would you be to see Konate come through the door this summer?
Because of expectations of the club, 4 or 5. Honestly, I wouldn't be happy, truthfully, because again, they make mistakes in that back line, and we're trying to cut that out. So we'd be defeating the objective of what we want to do in the first place. So, not particularly happy.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I'll ask you the same thing, was.
Yeah, but Konate, I think he's in the centre back options, but I don't think he's the priority. I think Upamecano and Koundé are in the top 2. Obviously, Upamecano's gone now. I think Koundé's priority. However, with United's board, you don't know where we'll prioritise in terms of centre backs this summer. Yeah, so yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, just before we move on, I'll bring up a comment that we had earlier that I brought up, saying mentioning Pau Torres. Now, we have been linked to him before, and I think the general consensus is he's a very good defender, but would he be a good partner for Maguire? I'll be interested to see what you two think, but he obviously doesn't quite have the pace. He's a similar sort of build of a player as Lindelof, and we've seen they don't quite work together, those two sort of player profiles. So just quickly, Henry, do you think Pau Torres would be a good option?
I think you hit the nail on the head there, mate, in terms of he hasn't got pace. And we're so reliant on pace that the one thing we're trying to do in this side, and people seem to kind of get this mixed up, we're trying to push the line up, because at the moment we're, against West Brom and against Sociedad, you look at the difference between the defensive lines. We're on the halfway line against Sociedad. We weren't like that against West Brom. And that's because we've got pace, we've got body. We can rely on someone to drop back in and use his pace to get the ball back or make challenges. And that's why Maguire and him complement each other. So, Pau Torres is slow. He is another Victor Lindelof. He's probably better on the ball, but, again, he's slow. And if you're going to sit even deeper, you've got a problem. We're trying to push the line up and we're trying to... you saw what it did in the game yesterday. I know it opened the game up a little bit, but it pushed everyone forward. It doesn't just do the defence, it's the whole team. You're able to get out quicker. You're able to rely on your centre-halves and not be concerned. So Fred and McTominay can be a bit more free in terms of passing and movement. So it impacts the whole team having two good centre-halves. So, Pau Torres for me. I know people like the way he plays, but he is another Victor Lindelof, probably even slower than Lindelof. So, definitely not for me.
How about yourself, Waz?
Yeah, I don't necessarily think it's about if the centre-back's good or not. It's about if the centre-back can partner Maguire. I think that's the question. Because Lindelof is a fairly decent to good centre-back, but alongside Maguire, it doesn't really work. We see, as Henry mentioned, with Bailly, he can step up into midfield. Then the midfield, as you saw yesterday, Fred and McTominay were like 10 yards forward, weren't they? And that's why Fred was allowed to thread that ball through Bruno, Rashford, whoever it was yesterday. And I think it just advances our team. I think if United want to progress as a team, they've got to play a higher line as well. So they will be looking at recovery pace at the back. And that's really it on that.
Fair enough. Well, we'll move on to the second target then. We'll go in sort of order of likability in a sense, in that how likely they are to happen. So we'll move on to Rafael Varane, who has been mentioned here and there. I don't think there's any solid interest, but it's sort of dividing the fan base. So just briefly to start us off, Henry, what would your thoughts be on Varane?
I think people need to remember it's dependent on the price of what we're going to get these players for. And Varane, if I'm right, I think he's got a year or two left on his deal. So if he doesn't renew it, Real Madrid will look to sell, because they'll look to sell as soon as possible because they'll get the most amount of money for him. And if you're going to get someone like that for 50 million and he'll be 20 million cheaper than Koundé, then the owners will go for it because, I know he's 27, but he's a winner and he's got a little bit of pace. And, the key thing for me is you've got to have a player, again, that fits Maguire. And Varane does and doesn't at the same time because he makes a lot of mistakes. But again, he's a top centre-half. You're not in the France national team winning trophies if you're a bad centre-half. It's as simple as that, really. So, I like Varane. I like Varane because the amount of things that he's won. But and I've just seen a comment there. Why would Varane leave Madrid for United? I think Real have got a problem in that they're in financial trouble. People seem to think that Barca and Real can still go out and buy players like they want. They can't, because Barca are in £1.5 billion of debt, so they couldn't afford to pay a fee for Eric Garcia in January. They couldn't afford to pay 200k to get him in January. So I mean, Real Madrid are in. They need to sell to buy, and they want to buy top players going forward. So I mean, if they need to sell, they'll sell this summer. I'm pretty certain of that. So I mean, Varane, maybe he wouldn't be my first choice, but again, the owners will look to save as much money as they can, and if they can do that by getting Varane instead of Koundé, they'll do it.
Can't disagree with that, Was. It's worth noting what Henry said. Obviously, the value would possibly be there in terms of financially, because he has got he's not got long left on his contract. But in terms of fitting the mould and in terms of whether he'd actually want to come to United, do you think he'd be a good fit?
With our French players, with the likes of Pogba and Martial, that may somewhat interest him because they have a good friendship at France with especially with Pogba and Varane. They have seemingly good friendship. However, with Varane, if you told me 3 years ago whether you take him or not, I would definitely have taken him. However, I just feel like in the past season he's just making more mistakes and seems to get injured more often, and It's just these little things. I feel like United need a fresh centre back instead of like getting someone else's hand off, if that makes sense. Although Varane, he is a top player, and depending on price, I probably would still take him. However, I'd have other priorities before him.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we're seeing now when Madrid are sort of less dependent on Ramos with his drop in performances. I think now that Varane has to take, so go on. What?
Can we mention something that's really seems to be kind of put on the back burner at the moment, and that is people's assumption that Pogba's just going to leave in the summer. I just wanted to mention in regards to where are people going to get this money to pay 70 odd million for Pogba? Where's this money going to come from? I know you mentioned it's probably likely he's going to go, but we're asking for a ridiculous price, so he may not have a choice. So in terms of if you want to get Varane and you've got the French connection, whatever, it might be a possibility, because who's going to pay 75 million? Juve can't afford it. Their wage bill's too big. Real Madrid can't afford it. They need to sell to buy, and they can't offload players for that much money and then bring in Pogba.
Might only be PSG.
Maybe PSG, but again, we're looking at financial fair play. You're looking at Neymar, who's on 500k a week, and Mbappe is on 300. You know, their wage, but I think if I'm correct, I think Herrera's on about 250k a week at PSG because he turned down a deal from us. So, you know, if they're gonna get him, they're gonna have to offload some players. They have to offload some midfielders that have just joined. So, you know, I know we're in a pandemic and stuff, but who's gonna be able to afford him? We won't want to do a swap deal. It's simple as that. The owners don't want to do a swap deal. They didn't do it last year because they want the money. Yeah. So, you know, they offered us, if I'm correct, they offered us 3 players. One of them was Rabiot, and we just turned them down. Why would we give one of our best players for someone who's barely played for him? Yeah. So, this imaginary world that Pogba's just going to leave for 70 odd million quid, no one can afford him. You know, Barca can barely afford to pay their own players. They're not going to try and get him. Pretty much the same with Real Madrid and Juve. Again, his main destination. They're not going to be able to sell all these players because they're on too much money a week. So, I mean, if we can keep him, then maybe we can get a top French player for less money because he might want to leave. So you never know.
I think the big problem with that is, though, that if he's not going to sign a new contract, I don't think. So if you keep him this year, you've lost him on a free again, which I think causes an issue with the United board. So I think they will probably just let him go for probably a lot cheaper than we'd like this season, just so that they can get a bit of money out of him.
It really depends. I get what you're saying. I really do. I get what you're saying. But which club is going to be able to take him on in terms of wages? And there might be a few teams who'll be able to pay 60, 70 million, but they're going to have to offload. You know, they're going to have to offload a lot of players. We're financially one of the top 3 biggest clubs in the world, and I know the owners are so hell bent on keeping their finances stable and they want their dividends and whatever, and that's absolutely fine because that's their decision. They own the club. But you know, in the same time, they want the side to get top 4, and if Pogba helps us do that, you know, and we can get a couple of good players in, you never know what's going to happen. So it's not nailed on that he's leaving, and it seems to be kind of put on the back burner and less likely that it's going to happen as time goes on.
Yeah, fair enough. You know, getting some good comments in from John. You know, it's similar to the Varane situation. They'll need to sell, I think, more than anything, because it doesn't look like he's going to sign a new contract, which is why he might go for cheaper. But yeah, just to sort of finish my piece on Varane, then I think we're seeing now that Ramos's performances are sort of dropping a little bit with age. It's obviously natural. He's having to become the main man in that back line, and I think it doesn't seem like he can handle it really. You know, we're seeing mistakes creep in that we haven't seen before, and I think if he joined United, I think the consensus would be that he'd be the main centre back. I think, especially among fans, you know, when you compare Varane to Maguire, Varane takes charge every time, doesn't he? So I think the problem then comes with how he deals with that pressure of having to lead the line and stuff like that. But there's no doubt he would be a good signing. He'd be an improvement on Lindelof. But yeah, we'll move on to what I assume is going to be everyone's favourite option. We'll move on to Koundé then. Should be available for around £70 million. Whether we can afford that or not is a completely different story. But Henry, I'm assuming he's your top option. So why would you want to see him at United so much?
Well, it's a brand of football. The way that Sevilla play, and again, I know they made so many mistakes against Dortmund, but that's just them in the Champions League all over, isn't it? That's what they do. So, but yeah, he's looked good alongside Diego Carlos. They've been a really good partnership, those two, and yeah, he's got pace and he's got power as well, and he scores, which Maguire needs to learn how to head the ball, for God's sake, because I think he's got like 3 goals in 2 years, which for a centre half that's 6'4" is just not good enough. It's just not. So yeah, we need one who can score and one who's good at bringing the ball out from the back and progressing the play, because whenever we play out from the back at the moment, I don't know, it almost gives me a heart attack. It's so nervous to watch when we're playing out from inside our own box, because we're not very good at it, and that's because Lindelof he's all right, but he's not that great, and he always concerns me that he's going to lose the ball. So yeah, but again, you mentioned the price, and the price is going to be a problem. It really is. If people think we're going to go spend 200 million this summer, yeah, I think you're a bit mistaken, because we're just not. The owners don't have that in mind. We get top 4. I think we'll get, spend maybe 80 max. So 70 of that's gone on Koundé already, or 60. So, yeah, people have got to be realistic about this. I know we need a right winger. I know we need a centre half, and I know we need a CDM. So if Varane's the cheaper option, it's going to happen. If he's the cheaper option, and even if he's slightly higher wages, he'll sell more shirts as well because he's a bigger name. So if he's a better financial option for the owners and for the, not necessarily for the team but for the club, then we'll take him, because he'll be cheaper and it'll be easier to get other players then. So people have got that's 90% of the decision. I can guarantee you. The 10% is football, and that's pushed to the side because these owners don't care about football. They don't know the offside rules. They don't care about football. They care about the finances. And if Varane makes better financial sense, then they'll get him. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah, I don't doubt that. Now, how are you feeling about Koundé? And then sort of to follow up on that, with the number of teams that are clearly going to be interested in him, do you think United will be at the front of his mind as someone he wants to join? I think that will also play into it.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think United will be in front of his mind. Maybe 10 years ago, but because of the lack of that European pedigree, we're in Europa League. There's top clubs that play Champions League football, so he's probably looking at that. But Henry hinted on it earlier regarding his strengths. Some of his strengths that I've seen is winning aerial duels. I think he's only 5'9", but his leap is quite good, and he often wins a lot of aerial duels. And also, something that I noticed about his game was his distribution from the back was quite good in terms of his long passing. His short passing could probably be a bit more sharper and crisper, but his long passing is fairly on point. And with Sevilla, they've got the second best goal against record in La Liga. They've conceded 16 goals, and only Atletico Madrid have done better with 14 goals, and he's a key part of that. And prior to the Dortmund game, they keep 7 clean sheets in a row, and they played Barca and Valencia in that run-in. So it just shows that Koundé and Carlos, as you mentioned, they've built a good partnership there. And Koundé is one of the thriving young centre-backs in Europe at the moment. And if United have some sort of ambition and like a statement signing, I think someone like Koundé would be a good player to get.
Yeah, definitely. I think I completely agree with what you're saying. I've got Koundé's profile up on FB Ref again, just to sort of give some context to his numbers. So, there's a lot, compare it to when we had Konaté's up here, there's a lot more greens, as you can see.
Yeah.
But, in terms of non-penalty expected goals, total shots, like Henry was saying, that goal threat is obviously there and will be a big factor for us, because other than Maguire, there's not many defenders contributing to actual goals. Shaw's getting a few assists here and there, but You know, in terms of actual output goals wise, he's pretty good for a centre back. You know, passes completed, he's much better than Konate again. Pass completion, sorry, he's again much better than Konate. Progressive passes, which is a big thing at United, isn't it? I think we do struggle often just passing the ball sideways and waiting for something to open up. But if we can get Maguire, whose ability lies within progressive passes when he actually wants to, and then you get someone next to him who is also trying to do that same thing, I think that'll be brilliant. I think progressive carries, he's carrying the ball out of defence a lot as well, which is what we're looking for, with Maguire not doing it very often. Dribbles completed, you know, it's all looking good going forward, isn't it? I think there is a slight worry when it comes to here and his sort of tackle numbers, interception numbers. But when you put next to someone with Maguire's ability, I think you can let him do all the dirty work in that sense, can't you? Yeah. And then, you know, you look further down. Obviously, I can't remember which of you it was, but the aerial duels one, to say how short he is, to get to be in the top 10% of defenders in Europe's top 5 leagues for duels one, it's incredible, isn't it? That's an instant improvement on Lindelof as well, his aerial ability. So, you know, all points lead to Koundé. But I think it is also worth mentioning there's a lot of hype around getting in a centre-back who is left-footed, and I think rightfully so. It contributes a lot to your attacking play and how you can utilise that left-hand side. But, you know, everyone we've analysed today has been right-footed. Now, I'll come to you first, Henry. Is this something that you think is really, really important when we're looking for a centre-back?
I think it plays a part, but I don't think it's as important as people are making out, you know. I know City went and bought Laporte and we're going to put him with Diaz, and that was going to be the partnership. But the reality is Diaz and Stones have worked perfectly for them. They've kept the most clean sheets out of any centre-back partnership in the league this year. So it's not huge. It's not as important as people are making out. And yes, it would be nice to have a left-footed Koundé, but we don't. There's no one on the market that fits that description. I think Pau Torres might be left-footed, but even if so, too slow. So you've got to look at other things first. And then if he's left-footed, it's an added bonus. But, you know, I'd be happy with him. I don't care if he's right or left-footed, or, you know, if he can only use his head in challenge. If he's quick, I don't care. So that's the priority for United, and should always be the priority for a centre-back this year.
Yeah, fair enough. Waz, how about you?
Yeah, regarding the left-footed centre-backs, I think, was it end of the season before when Nathan Ake played against United, there was that little murmuring at the end of the game where Ollie goes, I'm looking for a left-footed centre-back. I think it would actually benefit Maguire if we did have a left-footed centre-back, in terms of when he plays right centre-back, I think naturally he can bring the ball out more. He'll be more comfortable, because in that left-hand channel, sometimes as an attacker, if you run on Maguire's right-hand side, that means Maguire's got to use his left-hand side more, and he's got to use his left foot more. And sometimes he can get trapped in that little corner with Shaw. And also with Bissaka, he advances much less than Shaw. And then if Maguire was a right centre-back, Bissaka would be covering much more compared to Shaw, covering Maguire on the left-hand side. So, yeah, I think playing out from the back, what Ollie's looking out for, he wants that balance in defence with the left-foot centre-back. However, not sure. Maguire is fairly comfortable on the ball, and with Koundé is fairly comfortable on the ball. I think we'll be okay with that partnership.
Yeah, definitely. I did have something to say, but I can't remember it, so it can't have been that important. But just to sort of round us off with this segment, then I'll come to each of you. Do you think, I'll come to you first, Henry, obviously, do you think centre-back should be the big priority, or do you think priorities lie elsewhere in, you know, maybe a right winger, a CDM, something along those lines?
I wanted to talk about this, actually, because this is something that people they're keen to get kind of their point out about us signing a right winger. And I'll describe it in the best way I can. Okay, so if your engine in your car is broken, right, and you take it to the garage and you go, okay, my engine's broken, and they go, okay, you need to fix this now. It's a priority. You need to get it done. Then you go, you know what? Actually, I'm going to get some new wheel trims. No, that's what it is. If the fundamentals of the team are not working, centre back and CDM are the priorities.
Yeah.
You've got to put them first, because if you went and got your wheel trims for your car, it might look fantastic, it might look great, but there's still inner problems with it, okay? And you break down on the motorway, 100 miles away from home, you break down on the motorway, and someone goes, you got really nice wheel trims, but your car doesn't fucking work. So the priority is centre half. You fix the parts that are broken first. You don't fix our attack. If I'm correct in saying, is it the best or second best in the league this year? I think.
Yeah,
we've scored the most goals anyway.
Yeah, and then we've conceded the most out of any team in the top 10 this year. So priority is centre half. People can say they want a right winger, and that's fine. We can talk about Sancho for the rest of the year. That's absolutely fine. Buy a centre half, buy a CDM. Priorities. Get the priorities straight first. And when you've got a good defence, you can build on it, because our attack might even get better, because there'll be less, pressure on the defence, the attackers to do defensive work. So, we might progress even more. And if you've got one CDM who can do the role of Fred and McTominay combined, then you can put another more attacking player alongside him and build your attack even better. So priorities are centre half and CDM. Don't get that mistaken. I know Solskjaer wants a right winger, but that's on the back burner now, because we've seen the mistakes that we're making against West Brom, of all teams. West Brom, who've conceded, I think they've conceded the most goals in the Premier League. Yeah. And we're making mistakes against the team that are tipped for relegation. So that just can't happen. So centre-back, CDM, fix the parts that are broken. Then afterwards you can do all the flashy shit about, we can get Sancho or we can get whoever to go on the right, or get a backup striker, or do all that fantastic stuff on, afterwards. But get the priorities done first, because if we don't, we'll go no further than we are at the moment.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, I'll ask you the same question. Is centre-back the biggest priority, or do you think we need to focus elsewhere first?
I agree with Henry. The centre of the team needs addressing first, either at centre-back or centre defensive midfield. If we've got a top centre defensive midfield, for example, in Ndidi, as Henry mentioned, we wouldn't need to play two centre mids, as in McTominay and Fred. We could play one person that can hold that position on his own, and not with just Ndidi, for example, would help the midfield in terms of we could play one single pivot and two advanced. It could be Donny and Fernandes, for example. He'd help defensively in terms of he's very good in the air. He wins a lot of ground duels, and that will help the centre-back partnerships. So it's almost like you get like a 2-in-1. And yeah, with the right wing position, I actually think it's less of a priority now. I know people keep mentioning Sancho, not just the price. I feel that with the signing of Amad Diallo, even though Solskjaer may not mention it or fans may not mention it, I think deep down they're looking to improve or have patience with Diallo. And once he gets through, he's a similar age to Sancho anyway, and we spent like 38 million. Why would we spend 38 million on a youngster similar age to Sancho and then buy Sancho? It don't make sense. I think deep down they are looking at Diallo, and also we've got Greenwood on that right, and James can play that, even Rashford can play that at times. So I think it's less of a priority. Whereas centre defensive midfielder, I don't even think we've got one in the squad apart from Matic, but Matic's mobility is the only thing that lets him down, and maybe his fitness in terms of playing 2 games in a row. So yeah, I think centre defensive midfield is where I'll be looking at, and then maybe centre back.
James, can I bring up something ever so quickly?
Yeah, of course.
And it's about Liverpool, because we've seen them in really poor form recently. We've seen them poor defensively and poor going forward at times as well. You want to know why that is? Because they can't trust their centre halves.
Yeah,
they can't trust Henderson and they can't trust Fabinho to play together, because they're not centre backs and they're not good in their roles. Henderson and Kabak a little bit better, but they're still having to play more defensive players, and Wijnaldum is having to drop even deeper. Thiago is having to drop even deeper or be dropped to the bench because they can't trust him to do the defensive work. So that impacts the whole team. We've seen with them. I know people saying their attack aren't firing, yada yada yada. That's not the problem. The problem is the back of the team. So City, they play one CDM pretty much every game, and that's Rodri. And they play Diaz and Stones and Walker and whoever, Zinchenko or Mendy or Cancelo, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But they can trust those 3 in that kind of defensive midfield area of Stones, Diaz and Rodri to do the defensive job, because that's the most important triangle in the team you're going to get. Yeah. So that's why Liverpool haven't been doing it. So we can look at attacking players all we want, but it has to be that centre pyramid of the team is the most important part of the team. So get that fixed first, because we've seen it firsthand. Liverpool have just, I think it's the worst title defence we've ever seen in Premier League history, if I'm correct, in terms of points totals. And that's down to them not having two good centre-halves. It's simple as that. It all stems from two players. So, maybe we can, I'm not saying we're going to mount a title challenge next year because City will improve as well, but we'll improve massively with a good centre-half and a good CDM. It just will happen.
Yeah, definitely. I can't disagree with anything you've said. I won't try and build on it because you just said exactly what I was thinking. So, we'll move on then. I think the general consensus is we're bringing Koundé anyway, wasn't it? I think that's what we've all agreed on.
Yes.
But yeah, let us know in the comments who you think your ideal centre back would be to bring in. But we'll move on to the game yesterday and the game at the weekend. Obviously, it's easy to forget now how poor the weekend was given the result yesterday. So we'll put it on a back burner for a little bit. So just in terms of yesterday, obviously, I'll come to you first, Henry. Sociedad are a brilliant team. There's no doubt in that. But, we just tore them apart, completely. I personally didn't expect it at all. What did you make of the performance?
Well, I've seen since yesterday a lot of people slandering Sociedad as not a very good team. Let me just put that to bed right now. They're the fourth top scorers in La Liga, only behind, guess who? Atletico, Barca, Real. These guys are no mugs. People are acting like they don't score. They're not very good defensively. I think they're fifth in the league, but they score a lot of goals. So don't get that mistaken. So we beat a really good team. But the key was Eric Bailly. I don't know how many times you have to say this. If he doesn't start against Newcastle, Ollie has blood in his hands. Simple as that. Yeah. Because if we start Lindelof, we drop a few yards deeper and maybe we'll get a draw. Maybe we'll scrape a 1-0 with Lindelof in the team. But if Bailly does not start, we're in trouble at the weekend because he helps us so much. He really does. And I don't care if you inject him with something to keep him fit, giving him injections at half time to keep him fit. I don't care. Do it because it's a priority. He has to be fit. And as far as attacking play goes yesterday, I thought we were fantastic. And again, it's a team effort, but Dan James, really good yesterday. Thought he was really impressive. We caused him a lot of problems, but we did almost concede 2 goals in the first 2 minutes. So, and honestly, the first one with Januzaj, I was thinking, as soon as he cut on his left, I was thinking, shit. Because that's going, I thought 90% of the time with him, that goes in the top corner. So, we were a little bit vulnerable at times, but again, kept a clean sheet and won 4-0 against a team that, a lot of people were saying, they're overhyped or whatever. That's just not the case. They've taken points off some of the big teams in La Liga this year. So they're no mugs. And we nullified them. And it was from, pushing up a few yards and causing them a lot of problems in behind. I thought Rashford was good. If Rashford plays on the right-hand side at the weekend, I'm going to turn the TV off. I'm not having that again. He just turns to garbage when he's on the right because he just looks like he didn't want to be there. So, and that's part of the problem. I know I've slandered him a little bit for some of his performances because he doesn't run as much, but it's so clear the difference between the left and the right-hand side when he's playing. It's so obvious for anyone to see. I thought we were really good, and I thought Greenwood. I know he didn't score, and I know he didn't have as much of an impact in terms of assists and whatever. But I think he fits that team up front perfectly. And people might disagree, and that's fine. But he's able to drop a little bit deeper. He's able to connect the dots in terms of that front four. So I thought he had a fantastic game, and I thought that the movement in that kind of front four with Fernandes, Rashford, James, and Greenwood was fantastic. It was perfect. It was on point. Because if you can move defenders around and confuse them in terms of positional play and stuff like that, then you're going to win the game because that's the most important thing at the end of the day, scoring the goals. So, yeah, I thought it was fantastic, and I can't criticise performances because Even Telles was brilliant, and I thought Henderson was good as well. And I know I've advocated for him to start in the Premier League, and I will keep pushing my point across, because if De Gea keeps making mistakes and Ollie keeps playing him again, ludicrous decision, because he was fantastic. And Andy, if I'm correct in saying, the rollout to Fred, quick rollout to Fred, one pass, goal. Yeah. So, it's not rocket science the way that we played yesterday, and we played really well. But they played to our strengths. Let's get that very clear. Open game. Bad idea against United. Yeah. You play an open game, you're fucked against us. We've seen it with numerous teams this year. So fantastic, and I'm delighted with the performance.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's a good point you made about the attackers, and it's something we will touch on in a few minutes. But I'll come to you next, Waz. I'll ask you a similar sort of question, and then just to sort of build on it as well. Do you think it was a particularly good performance by us, or do you think their high line, the lack of pressing, really played into our hands and made it easy for us to sort of exploit them?
I think the ultimate answer is a bit of both, to be honest. I thought, as Henry mentioned, out from the back with Bailly, we played well. I thought McTominay and Fred, for that level of game, they played well. With what's the name, Sociedad, they do keep possession well with the players like Illuminati, who was at Real Madrid prior to Sociedad when he returned, and then the David Silva, Januzaj. But with United, one of the greatest strengths is the counter attack, that they can hit the ball in behind. I think Fernandes played Rashford a couple of times, the ball in behind in the channels. We've done it before against Man City. It's one of our strengths. Whereas United get a lot of criticism, but on the counter attack, we're one of the best teams in Europe. So I think they did play in our hands in that sense. However, often with Spanish teams, apart from probably Atletico Madrid, most of them played their style of play. They were 3-0 down, and they were still playing up from the back. You see at the end. I think that's why in the bigger conversation why they produce highly technical players, because then mid-table teams or just above that can be beaten on a given day, but what their elite is elite, and you can't their elite ultimately, like in yesteryears with Barcelona, you can't touch them because they're so drilled in their way of football. But yeah, I thought United played well. I thought there was a lot of good individual performances. I was happy with Daniel James. I thought his decision making was better. He gave Monreal a torrid time, but it was a good opponent to face in terms of facing Monreal. He's past his best, and he was an okay Premier League player as well. But yeah, I was just happy with the performance. It was disappointing Rashford didn't take his opportunities, because if that's a position he wants, I'm not sure. I think he prefers left wing, but if the striker position somewhat seems available in terms of Cavani may only have a year left, Martial's probably not favoured. So if Rashford wants to take that position, he's got to be more clinical. Although this season, even though Rashford performances have not necessarily been great, they've been hot and cold, his goal contributions have been good. So that's why you got to lay off him a bit, because his goal contributions, I think they're top 5 in Europe in terms of forwards. So you've got to respect that. Yeah.
I mean, it's a fair point, isn't it? I mean, it was obvious again yesterday, Henry, that while he did grab a goal, Rashford, he did miss 2 very big chances while it was still 0-0. So yeah. I think that we would have had a completely different outlook on his performance had we not won that game, because I think those 2 chances could have been very costly. Now, Henry, do you think he has enough to secure that striker position, or do you think we need to keep him out on the left, and that's where he's more dangerous?
The problem doesn't lie with his finishing one-on-one necessarily. It's when he doesn't have time to make a decision. So when he's got a bit of pressure on him, he's had it. The 2 times that he missed those chances, it was down to quick thinking, and that's not him. When he's through one-on-one with a keeper with about 10 yards of space, he'll bury it. So as soon as he was going through with the Fred pass, I thought he's just going to score this, because that's what he does. He scores when he's got a bit of time and a bit of space to think about what he's going to do. But when he hasn't got any time to bring it down, or with the one over the top in the first few minutes, he didn't have any time to bring it down or think about the shot. Fernandes would have scored that, but it was kind of a panic shot at the end of the day, and the same with the squared ball as well to him. In the first 10 minutes or so, it was a pretty easy chance for any other striker. So left wing is his position. You know, he can score from 20 yards out as well, and that's fine. But he is not a striker. Make that very clear now. He is not a striker. He doesn't have the instinct, the impulse decision to score that Cavani does. And, you know, it really tells. So I'm really hoping that Greenwood can push Martial and Cavani in that position, because I really want him to play up top. And again, it's all down to learning off Cavani and impulse decisions. We're also forgetting that we've got a manager who was a poacher. That's what he was. You know, he wasn't a fantastic player. I know people will say, you know, he won the trophy. He was not a good player. Let me make that very clear. But he was very good at what he did, which was coming on and poaching goals. Poaching goals when defence is switched off. So if you want someone to learn off in terms of in the 6-yard box and getting those, I know, tap-ins, but they're still goals, then Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is your man. So, yeah, I thought decision-making from Rashford was poor, but I'd like to see Greenwood push that place. And, you know, maybe that is a route to go forward, because whenever those kind of play, you know, they look a threat. When Rashford's on the left, he looks a threat. And when Greenwood has played up top, and he hasn't played up top a lot, he still looks a threat. He's not good at crossing either, which really doesn't help us. So, yeah, again, I'm happy with Rashford's performance, but there's so much room for improvement, and he needs to. The decision making the last 6 months has been shit for Rashford. That's the best way I can put it. You know, it's been really, really poor. So, yeah, that. However much I partially agree with that comment, no. You can't loan Greenwood out. You just can't do it, because it would be criminal for the fan base as well. Toxic, because that's your season. You know, that's the story made up for your season. If he performs well out on loan, we're going to get a hell of a lot of stick, United. So, yeah, again, it is what it is.
Yeah, fair enough. I think just quickly to touch on that loan point, I think if Mason Greenwood went to Brighton, I think he'd get 30 goals a season with the amount of chances they create and with how good his finishing is. But yeah, just to carry on with Greenwood's performance yesterday, then I'll ask you. Obviously, he didn't get a goal or an assist, I don't think, but you know, his general link-up play and getting things going was pretty good. Now, do you think this is something more he can offer? Because you know, he was previously just an out-and-out goal scorer, but now we're seeing a few more different aspects to his game. So do you think this is generally a good thing for the team?
Yeah, I think with Greenwood, people often think about his goal scoring attributes when he isolates maybe a fullback and then cuts in, hits in the corner. But his link up play is fairly underrated. With the likes of Rashford, James, and Bruno, they're very direct players. They're very instinctive players as well. Whereas you don't want all your attackers to be instinctive and direct, because there's no balance there. Greenwood, he's a bit more softer and more delicate in his touches, and he'll play a 1-2, and that keeps the ball in the final third for longer. So I think with Greenwood, his link-up play is good. He can even play similar to that number 10 position. And even with Henry mentioned, with Fernandes advances a lot. So even if Greenwood did play number 9, them two could possibly build a good partnership, because even Greenwood could drop in and the Fernandes could push forward. So yeah, I think that's an underrated element to Greenwood's game. His link-up play. He's very intelligent on the ball. He manipulates the ball very well, in tight spaces, doesn't he? And then he may take a shot or lay it off to a teammate. So yeah, I think maybe just in terms of physicality and strength, he may not play number 9 just yet. However, I think he will definitely eventually play number 9 for Manchester United.
Yeah, I really hope so. He does look a bit unnatural out on that right, so I hope we can shift him into the middle as soon as possible. But you know, it's all well and good talking about how well we played yesterday, but it is worth providing context. Obviously, we need to talk about the weekend, because you know, we haven't put out a podcast since the West Brom game. Now, I think other than maybe Sheffield United at home, that was probably our worst performance of the season in terms of actually creating chances. You know, you look at the Spurs game where we lost 6-1, and you look at Palace at home where we lost 3-1. We still created a few chances here and there, but you know, against the worst defence in the league, to create as few chances as we did, you know, 0 big chances created. It was pretty appalling by our standards. Now, Do you think, looking back at that game, do you think this Sociedad game is us turning a corner? I'll come to you first, Henry. Or do you think it's just papering over a few cracks?
Well, so I was concerned because we didn't put a podcast out after the West Brom game, and I thought, if we win the Sociedad game, it's going to go the same as this fan base always goes, and it's going to go, oh, we're fantastic again. We won 4-0, and guys, let's be realistic here. Come on, let's be realistic about what we're doing this season. Yeah. In regards to our results, losing to Sheffield United, drawing to West Brom, not good enough. Simply not good enough. And yes, we made defensive mistakes again, but you mentioned there 0 big chances created against the side that are second bottom or whatever, third bottom, second bottom. It doesn't matter. They're in the bottom 3, and we're looking to be up here. Not good enough. So, I know. So I'll put it this way. Every time we've won a game, James, and this is not a knock on you at all, we've mentioned turning a corner every time we win a game. And then we go and put out a dog shit performance 3 or 4 days later. It can't keep happening. We can't keep talking about, so we can put a fantastic performance out against Leipzig or something, and then we can go and draw the West Ham game, like in the FA Cup, that we won 1-0, scraped it. Not good enough. It's just not good enough for United. This is a problem with this fan base. We get too hyped after a win. So I'm sitting here thinking, it's a good win. It's a really good performance. But I'm not judging anything until the Newcastle game on Saturday. We're a moments team. That's what we are.
Yeah, definitely.
And if we don't take our moments, we draw 0-0 or lose 1-0. So we're not a consistent, Liverpool and City sustain pressure every single game. Even if Liverpool play poorly, they sustain pressure. Against Brighton, I know they had the same amount of attempts or whatever, but they were able to sustain pressure for a long period of time. We can't do that. We can't do what City did against Everton and run them off the park, or, we're just not that kind of side. We're a moments team. So if we don't take our moments against Newcastle, we'll be going back to, we didn't turn a corner, we're not good enough, and then we'll beat Sociedad again next midweek, and everyone will go, we're fantastic again. Let's keep realistic here. We're still in a top 4 battle. I said before, I think Chelsea will finish above us in the league, and I still do, because they're consistently not conceding goals, which is something that we're struggling with at the moment. And Liverpool, they're just beating Leipzig. They're back in it. As soon as they get their form back, which I said they would, as soon as they get their form back, we're in a race. With Leicester as well. I know they've had a lot of players out injured, but they've got Ndidi back, and they're looking like a good, solid team now. We're in a race for that top 4 spot. Let's not get mistaken about this. So I'm focusing on Sunday night, and a win is a priority. If we don't win that game, we're back to talking about whether we're even going to get top 4. And, so I keep realistic. I try to keep consistent. I know I may seem a bit morbid at times, but I'm a realist, not an optimist. And I think being optimistic can be dangerous at times, especially with this side that we've got at the moment this year.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, there's not much we can really build on from what Henry said, because I think he covered all the bases. So I'll ask you sort of a different line of questioning sort of relates to what we were talking about earlier, obviously bringing in a new centre-back and a defensive midfielder. Do you think sort of the knock-on effect of having a world-class sort of progressive centre-back and a really good holding midfielder, do you think that would have impacted the game at the weekend? Because obviously, we could have pushed up 10 yards further. We could have really penned them in. But, instead we just looked a bit lackluster because no one really wants to take the game to him. So do you think if we played the exact same game next season, say we brought in Ndidi and a quality centre-back, do you think that game goes differently?
Yeah, possibly. Ultimately, it depends on Ollie and his style of play. I think Ollie mentioned that he don't necessarily have a style of play, but he has principles of play. So maybe pass forward or go wide, shoot within like the 18-yard box, whatever his principles are. The thing with United is week in, week out, we don't really know how we're going to score as a team. Like if you watch Man City, it's the same patterns. Even the other week, Gundogan flashed it across the box and Sterling taps it in. The reason Gundogan flashed it across the box because he knows Sterling's going to be there. It's already like pre-worked on. And that's the problem with United. It's the lack of style of play. Even against West Brom, I think we were the only team like since November not to create as much chances as other teams. They've created like 10 plus. So it's a difficult one with United. I don't like necessarily judging teams mid-season, because we could end up winning the Europa League, finishing third, and then you think, should we give Ollie one more year with a bit more investment? So mid-season is a bit difficult, so I try to be patient. But as Henry mentioned, the thing with fans, they judge game by game. Their emotion switches game by game. So if we lose, they'll feel down. If we win, they'll feel high. But if you constantly think like that, you're never really gonna like have some rationality in terms of your thinking towards United. For example, Koundé, he didn't even have a bad game against Dortmund, but let's just say for argument's sake he had a bad game, and everyone's writing him off. Oh, I'm not sure on Koundé. I've got reservations about Koundé. That's probably the first game you've seen of him all season, and you've not noticed that he's just kept 7 clean sheets in a row. They've got the second best defense in La Liga. He's shined in the week before. He scored against Barcelona or something, driving out from the back. Like, are you just going to keep judging game by game, or are you going to look at the bigger picture? As a fan, like personally, I try to look at the bigger picture. Where are United in the league? How we're doing in the cup competitions? Losing to Leipzig and getting knocked out of the Champions League, that was a big one. I don't know if you remember when we played Everton away. We ended up winning 3-1, but that game was quite defining on Ollie. I think David Gill was in the stands. When David Gill's in the stands, especially in an away game, you know they're talking about something, because David Gill's often there when someone's about to get sacked. But yeah, with United, I digressed a bit, but with United, in terms of the style of play, it's because we don't have a fixed style of play. It's like everything's in moments. It's like, can Bruno do this? Can maybe Tellers whip a cross in? Can Greenwood cut in and shoot? You don't really know what you're going to get, because our players are so good in terms of, we've got a lot of good players in terms of Rashford's ultimately a good player. He's one of the best in the Premier League in terms of like his top 5 teams, top 6 teams. Bruno's one of the best players in Premier League. Pogba's one of the best players in Premier League. Greenwood's one of the best youngsters in Premier League. They all can do stuff in moments. If you noticed against when we played Fulham and a few weeks back when Pogba bailed us out 2 weeks in a row, didn't he? Because it was in moments again. That's the problem with United. If we don't score in those moments, even the finish against West Brom, probably only Fernandes and a couple of other players in the whole of Premier League can score that goal with his left foot behind him at that height. So that's what I mean. It's a problem with United in terms of moments, and it's something we've got to work on. It's just difficult, because you want to be positive about your team, but you don't want to be overly positive, and then you want to give Solskjaer time, but then you think, how is it going to work? So ultimately, like personally, I judge at the end of the season, see if he wins a trophy. If he wins a trophy and finishes third, for example, I'd personally probably give him another year just to see how we'd progress with a centre-back and a defensive midfielder. But if we don't win a trophy and finish 4th, personally, I probably will be Ollie out, in terms of I'm not seeing enough progression, because it's been 2 years and we've still not got a style of play. So I don't always feel that Ollie's like honest with us sometimes in terms of his quotes. He says the right thing, but when it comes to the game, we don't really implement that.
James, can I ask you something?
Go on then.
So I know you're a little bit probably more pro Ollie than I am, for sure. In terms of how we play as a side and whatever. But do you see what we're going to do against Newcastle at the weekend? We've had 2 years of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Do you know what team he's going to play against Newcastle?
No. I was actually going to ask you both who you think we should line up with, but yeah, I think it's worrying that he doesn't. Yeah, it's worrying that he doesn't know his best 11. I think he's got an idea, but he's not set on it. It's worrying that he doesn't have a set style of play that he can implement and just keep things simple for the team. I think it's detrimental to the team as well, the fact that he relies on them to produce big moments, because they've got no real guide as such. They're just being told, if you get a chance, you better score it, otherwise we're not winning the game. There's nothing to sit back and rely on when things aren't going well, but it is worrying. I think I'm giving him credit, because there was a time this season, just a few weeks ago, where we were top of the league, and I think he deserves credit for what he has done.
Yeah.
I think the amount he's getting from Cavani. Obviously, Cavani's a quality player, but you still need to get the performance out of him, and I think he's doing that very well. But yeah, I'm very much with Waz. I think I'm still very much Ollie, and I think he deserves time. But I will review that point at the end of the season.
So out of the top 10 teams in the league, let's say, out of all of them, I can predict probably 9 of the starting lineups at the weekend, maybe bar 1 or 2 different players. The one team that I can't predict the starting lineup is ours. I don't know what he's going to do. You know, with City, you know what they're going to play. They might play a different winger, or maybe instead of De Bruyne, they might play Gundogan again. But you know, pretty much from like 8 or 9 players, you know, are going to start in that team. With us, I don't know. He might start. Wan-Bissaka and Shaw and Maguire are all nailed on. The others, I haven't got a clue. He might start Matic. He might even start Van der Beek if he's fit. Who knows? So that's a concern I've got. Is there's a blueprint for all the other teams in the top 10, even Everton, who are, you know, they've just lost to Fulham. You know what they're going to play. You know what style of play they're going to go with, and you know what team they're going to play. So with us, it's a concern that we're relying on individual moments after 2 years of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Mm-hmm. And I know it's off the back of a 4-0 win, so I'm probably being a bit I'm dampening the mood a little bit. But whoever's watching this, ask yourself, can you see a predicted team for the next 3 or 4 games with United? And guarantee your answer will be no. Because we don't know week to week what we're going to get. The West Brom game it's Jekyll and Hyde. The West Brom game and the Sociedad game, 2 polar opposites. So, and that's in the space of, 4 days? So we have no idea what we're going to get. And that's my concern. I want to see a blueprint. I see a blueprint with Jurgen Klopp. Even if they're playing badly, they have a definitive way of playing, and they're going to cross balls into the box, and they're going to play this way. They don't try anything new, but it's effective. When it comes off, it's effective, and when they've got fit enough players. So it's a massive, massive concern. But, you know, can you realistically predict 8 or 9 of the starting players in United's team at the weekend?
Can I just mention, do you know when Ollie first arrived, he played Matic, Pogba and Herrera, and those 3 midfielders, they were set pretty much every game. It was Matic, Herrera, Pogba, Pogba advancing, Herrera doing a bit of the ugly works, so to speak, and Matic covering. I think Ollie, he don't trust a lot of players. I don't think deep down he trusts Bailly in terms of fitness. He don't trust Lindelof, even though he plays him. I think it's his best option because he's got no one else to pick. I don't think he trusts Swansea. I don't think he trusts Fred and McTominay. That's why he plays both of them instead of one of them in the single pivot. So he plays a 2. I think if he did have investment in those positions and players he could trust, for example, Koundé and Ndidi, that we would see a more progressive play. However, again, it is difficult with Ollie. Again, I am with Henry in terms of 2 years. You must have a style of play within a year. You should see your style of play come to bits, like the pieces should be there. But with United, it is fairly inconsistent. So it is a difficult one. Again, as James mentioned, I would give it to end of season, then review it, and then you look at the pros and cons, and then possibly make a decision.
But over 2 years, would Liverpool, City, Chelsea, Arsenal, would they all stand for? I mean, Emery, I think he was there for a year and a half or 2, and he got sacked. Definitive style of play, did well in the Europa League, getting top 4 or 5 in the league, got sacked. So
go on. Go on. Go on.
Carol, go on.
Yeah, I think though sometimes we do have to look at the overall picture. Even me, I get very frustrated because my style of play in terms of watching football and how I like to play personally, I honestly love how Man City play. Like how they're playing Everton the other day, how they're rotating in spaces, the appreciation of one another. Sometimes just like playing 1-2s and playing calm and through the lines. I love watching that sort of football. And with Ollie though, you've got sometimes as fans we always want. But then if you think about it, Ollie, he has closed the gap. All right, Liverpool have had a lot of injuries, and that's obviously taking its toll on Liverpool. But we've closed like a 30-point gap. Even probably plus that because we're ahead of Liverpool at the moment. So we got to look at little details like that. And a few weeks ago, he was second in the league. However, as Henry mentioned, the football isn't sustainable because we do play in moments, so that's going to end up catching up on you. And I think that has catched up on us. I thought with the likes of Pogba staying fit, Fernandes, and it being a COVID season and games are behind doors, I thought with momentum and going on a long run that United could possibly achieve something based on momentum and going on a long run, because we've seen him in the past. Ollie's gone on like 18 games undefeated. He can go on these wild runs. So my optimism was more on that instead of our actual style of play, and my optimism was on our individual players, like more bailing us out instead of our style of play.
Yeah, let's be very clear. Without Bruno Fernandes, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer would not be in a job right now.
Yeah,
let's be very, very clear about that, because one player has turned this club from like mediocre essentially to a good side. So when he doesn't play well, we inevitably don't play well ourselves. So the team around him don't do the right job. So yeah, let's be very clear. He's single-handedly turned around this club from being 5th, 6th, mediocre to something that's the next level, and that's credit to the scouting team, but also bear that in mind. Whereas City and Liverpool, they have 4 or 5 players that can really hurt you on a game-to-game basis. If Mane doesn't do it, Salah does. If Salah, Mane don't do it, Firmino does. You've got these players that are going to cause you, or Robertson or Alexander-Arnold, they're going to cause you problems. Same applies for City. I can name 5 or 6 players that if one or two of them don't step up, the others will. So, yeah, we're so heavily reliant. That's why Fernandes plays every game, because we're so heavily reliant on him. So, yeah, let's be very clear that without Fernandes, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer would be working probably back in Norway with a mid-table side. No, that's just the reality of it. Yeah. So, we've got to keep realistic about this, and again, until we start doing poorly again, I'm happy when we're winning games, and that's the most important thing. But I want to see a brand of football that I can trust. Looking at this team, I think the Sociedad team that we're playing against, a good side, and I'm looking at our team thinking, I don't know what we're going to get here. We could win this game. We could do it with against Leipzig, win it 5-6-0. 7-0, 8-0, or we could lose it 2-0. You never know with this side. So, but again, until we start losing again, I'm happy and I'm content with it. But I want to see a brand of football, because for fuck's sake, if we go 3 years without seeing, and we're still a moments team after buying a couple of players next year, it's not sustainable. It's just not, and it's not the right way of running a football club and getting performances. That's probably why Pogba wants to leave as well, because he's probably thinking, if I don't score, or if Fernandes doesn't score, we've had it. Yeah. So we'll see what happens, and I hope he keeps his job, and I hope he does well. But I want to see a massive improvement on a week-to-week basis with this team, because it's so frustrating. This team, it's so goddamn annoying to watch football week in, week out, and it's probably shortened my lifespan by about 20 years in the space of 2 with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer as manager. So but hey, it's what it is.
Fair enough. Anyone else got anything to add before we wrap it up?
No, I agree with Henry. The football we played has not been sustainable. That's why it ends up catching up with you, because once you pull those individuals out, for example, you pull Fernandes out, pull Pogba out, you see a massive difference. You shouldn't see that much of a significant difference. You should see a bit of a difference, but not that much of a significant difference. Once Pogba was out the team, Donny van de Beek should have occupied that position. But for United, we changed that whole style of play based on one player, and it shouldn't be that dramatic. But yeah, with Ollie, we could probably have this conversation another time. For me, he's done a lot of good in terms of he's cleaned out the squad. He's sorted the wage structure out. There's the unity in the squad seems better than before. There are some good aspects to it, but obviously on the football side of things, in terms of Champions League, that was unacceptable, and getting knocked out in the way we did against Leipzig, and in terms of style of play. So you've got to weigh in both sides. ultimately, hopefully I want us to win a trophy and obviously now finish top 4 and then possibly give Ollie another year, but we'll have to see now.
Yeah, completely agree with him. But I think unless you've got anything to add, Henry, I think we'll call it a day there.
All good.
Fair enough. Right. Well, Waz, brilliant to talk to you. Thanks for joining us.
Cheers, mate.
As ever, very grateful. If you haven't already, check out Waz on Twitter. His handle's in his name. He's doing some really great stuff, some good threads on United players and just offering a lot of good insight. So, yeah, if you haven't, go and check him out. But, Henry, as ever, thank you for joining me.
No problem. No problem.
Thanks to everyone who watched. If you enjoyed, be sure to like and subscribe. But until next time, we'll see you later.
Manchester United are the champions of Europe again.